are things that technology has allowed and we can accomplish that we couldn't do it 35 years ago. So some of the things that Cope did was very real. One thing that I feel like Kirsten and I have committed to, as the Lord allows and as He provides, is that we want to be on the road and we want to see faces. That's one thing I did appreciate about Frank when it started and Johnny. They went to these places and they went and saw people. And so since July, I was elected in, just in the short time, I mean, we visited places in Indiana, Florida, Alabama, and we're meeting people involved in prison ministry and saying, how can we help? And in the question of, I wonder if, what's the relevance of it? Is there still room for it? Is there still making an impact? And our very first trip that we made soon after that was to Florida, and we realized that the answer was 100% yes. What that was all going to look like, I don't know. But in 3 days of staying in Florida, we went to some Florida prisons, which that was just for fun. But we went with my buddy Dan Evans with Harvest of Life in Tallahassee that does prison ministry. But I was able to walk Dan and his wife through a transition of him becoming executive director for an existing ministry. So walking through QuickBooks and changing over things and IRSs and 990s and stuff that they were new at, but we've just had experience of doing over the last little while. I got to meet another guy that was talking about opening up housing for veterans coming out of prison. They didn't have the property yet. They were just developing a board, and he was had those same I talked to my board, and I'm not sure if my board, and so I've been able to share with him, how do you start building your board? How do you start kind of commissioning them? How do you start raising funds? And a third ministry that we connected with is doing housing for 25 years. 25 years, and the guy that is running it, I won't say his age, that boy has been in it for a long time and built every relationship with the parole and probation and all of that. And here's the issue. That guy is going to die. And that ministry is not going to survive because they're not breeding a successor for that. And I'm seeing that all over the country, that people are not raising up the next generation for these ministries to survive. And these ministries are high impact ministries inside our prisons. And so I've seen it, I've seen it in everywhere that we've gone. So I recognize that in that short time that there is a need for Cope. Because there's 3 things that we want to accomplish with Cope. Lots of things, but I want to bring it down to 3 cores. Number 1, I want us to understand that I want Cope to be a part of advancing the kingdom. Yes. And so when people sow their time, their money, their whatever into Cope, that it is, number 1, to advance the kingdom through prison ministry, with connecting with the vulnerable community. And I know you can't really see it, but it talks about strengthening organizations called the prison ministry, promoting excellence in ministries of revival, resources, reentry, and restorative services. And those are, a play on alliteration, 4 words. That the revival part is that we're going inside prisons and we're discipling and we're ministering and we're worshiping. That's the idea of just birthing revival in prison. Resources. You and I know people that they don't go into prisons, but they're writing books, they're writing tracts, they're sending materials, they're sending Bibles, but they don't go. They don't go into prisons. Mark and Gloria Chapman, they don't go into prisons, but they send Mark's story all over the world. Well, Gloria ain't going to no prison, except to go see her husband. Yeah, he's there every day. But there's ministries that's what they do. They do resourcing. That's their call. We have people that are doing reentry, recovery, houses like Lonnie's ministry here. Part of what they're doing with Hilltop houses here in Dallas. They've planted in other states. What we're doing up in Northeast Indiana, some of you guys are doing out of your houses. Real things, but trying to create that connectivity. And lastly, the restorative services. Some of the funnest ministries that I found out about are the Camp David of the Ozarks over in Minnesota, or the what's their faces? Christian Formation. But what's their names? Dawn and the Johnsons down in southern Indiana. right above like Louisville or something like that. But they're doing services for the children of men and women who are incarcerated or struggling with addiction or whatever. They're serving the children. I think that's brilliant. And so it's the idea, every once in a while when you're around prison ministries or prison people, we're all very opinionated and we're strong like people for the Lord. But sometimes every once in a while you hear a hint of, well, I go into prison and they just do blank, or we do reentry, but they don't go in. And there's a hint of like there's some hierarchy in it. Blah, blah, make me puke. No, it is all a part of the kingdom and what God wants to do. So we want to celebrate all those parts and we want to encourage them. And the reality is that there are people doing amazing work. And so one thing that COPE has the opportunity to promote is that we do not have to recreate the wheel in some of the things that we do. Whether that be music ministry, reentry, recovery. If there are people that are wanting to do stuff, we're an email or a phone call away to people and resources that have been doing very good work around the country. To plant houses, to do services for families, to do parenting seminars and curriculum and things like that. Listen, if I'm doing parenting stuff up in North, I am not creating one lick of curriculum. Because I'm calling you cats for it. I promise you, I am not creating it at all.
There is a C word involved. It's not create, it's connect.
I talked about we want to be a part of advancing the kingdom through prison ministry. That is some. Number 2, we want to be able to strengthen you personally in your ministry. If that's a phone call, fine. If that's I don't want to write checks that my behind can't cash. I'll tell you that. But I want to be a culture that says if we need you, that we can be there as an organization. And I don't have to carry that burden by myself. It's an organization that can come alongside people. If you're in a rough area, can we come? If you're struggling with money, what can we talk about? Helping with fundraising or connecting with local churches or things like that. That happens to be one of my specialties up in Indiana. I'm writing grants. I connect with funding. When I first started doing all this, I was a little nervous about asking people for money. I ain't that nervous about it anymore. Because I know how God is using it. I don't spend 1 second wondering if, oh man, people give us money. I know it's for the kingdom. And if you met Johnny before, Johnny ain't afraid to ask money from anybody. But we want to strengthen you, and then we also want to promote your ministry. We want to promote what God is doing. On the Facebook, on the website, we want people to know about it. We want to make connections with what's going on in prisons. But we want to promote your ministry. What all that looks like yet? I don't know. We're still kind of sorting it out. We got the website. We want to have it on there. We want to put it on Facebook. We want to talk about what God's doing. We want to share the stories. In your bags, I put some things. Those are some of the examples that I think are important. We talk about these testimonies. These testimonies are so incredibly important because people still stigmatize everything. And I got cats like, that's why I gave you some examples of some of the stuff that we do with our ministry. We're putting their faces and their stories out there all the time. And we're saying it's real. These guys and these girls are changing. And so I want COPE to be a part of that, telling that message of change. Not just that we're going into prisons, and that's obviously a big part of it, but people are being transformed by the gospel of Jesus Christ. Amen. And I want their faces to be a part of it. However that starts looking, like how we can brand just transformation by the Lord Jesus Christ.